4, Ryan, now. And here we go. Football season well underway now. We got a little bit of I guess if you compare it to Christmas, you got to open up a few gifts early last week with week 0. But we're full bore heading into this weekend. All 4 Idaho colleges in action this weekend. Boise State at Georgia Southern. Idaho playing in Eugene at Oregon. Idaho State playing at Oregon State. College of Idaho in action. That'll be their second game of the year for that. But here we go. Football is back. We got 53-man rosters to talk about. We can talk about some 2-deep college depth charts as well that's got some Idaho connections. And then later on the show here in about 40 minutes, we'll have Scott Gross, who's the play-by-play guy for the Idaho State Bengals, on with us to preview their upcoming season. So here we go. Football is back, my friend.
Football is absolutely back and in a huge way. And my wife's not happy about it because it takes up all kinds of time. And on top of that, she kind of gives me grief too. She's like, how is it that you know this obscure fact about some random team and you cannot find the mayonnaise in the fridge? And I'm like, I mean, that
sounds like a discussion that's happened in my house too.
Because it's real. But you mentioned all 4 teams in action this week, and those are good games. Some better than others. Some outcomes are going to be more bountiful than others. But I think that it's nice to see all 4 teams in action that play football at the college level in the state of Idaho, and it's going to give us a ton to talk about. And then you talked about the 53-man roster and what are those Idahoans doing beyond.
Yeah, I mean, tons to talk about here today heading into Labor Day weekend. Hope you guys are all got some fun plans for this weekend, as I know I'm going to be watching football basically all weekend, as I'm sure you will be as well. That's kind of what we do. So my name is Lucas Gephardt. He's Ryan Luke. We are the Fighting Tater Show. Don't forget, you can watch this show on IdahoSports.com, the YouTube channel as well on Idaho Sports, IdahoSports.com Facebook page, and the X account. You can also listen to this show on IdahoSports.com or wherever you download and subscribe to your podcast. So let's go ahead and get into it. It was, probably one of the tougher days on the NFL side of their calendar year, cut days. But good news is we did have some Idahoans make some 53-man rosters. The obvious ones that obviously Taysom Hill, tight end for the Saints. He's been on the Saints for a while. He's going to be on the Saints. Whether or not he'll play tight end or somewhere else, I guess we'll see. But obviously Taysom Hill kind of leading the charge here. But we also have Scott Matlock, defensive end for the Chargers. He was a late round draft pick, a 6th-round draft pick, I believe, for the Chargers. So,
yep.
Yeah, 6th-round draft pick there for the Chargers. He's from Homedale. And then some new ones to talk about here. Jonah Ellis, he's a linebacker for the Denver Broncos. He played at Moscow High. He was a 3rd-round, mid-round draft pick for the Denver Broncos this year. I should know that based, looking at the background here.
Yeah, right. We got you.
So that's going to be exciting to watch him. And then probably one of the most surprising on this list, how about this? Colston Yankoff, tight end for the Commanders, undrafted, making the Commanders 53-man roster. And he just makes plays. He was a quarterback in high school. He's played a little bit of running back. He's played tight end. And he's a good enough football player that the Commanders say, hey, I know we didn't even draft you, but we think you're a good enough football player to contribute to our 53-man roster, and he makes their 53.
Yeah, 53. It was interesting reading an article about him. And, I remember him back when he played in high school football. And it's tough for me to say that I didn't envision him playing at the NFL, but I didn't picture him as a tight end. Does that make sense? I didn't think he'd be playing at that level. But the truth is he's not. They list him as tight end, but he's going to be more of a special teams guru, and he plays more of like an H-back. So you're not going to see him probably lined up tight with his hand in the ground at the end of the line of scrimmage. I think you'll see him kind of move around, assuming he starts taking on some more bigger role on offense. And you got to remember, undrafted rookie free agent making the team, and he's just going to find a way to try and get on the field. And eventually, if he does become a player for them, I think the player you can most, he's most similar to at this point. You remember Chris Cooley for the Commanders?
Yes.
It might have been,
Yeah. Yeah.
but he played tight end, but he was a little bit off. He's kind of that H-back type thing, and I think that
Yeah.
Yankoff is what they're kind of reincarnation of Chris Cooley coming back and playing for the Commanders, Redskins at the time, but Commanders.
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting watching the reports and stuff come out of Commanders camp and just kind of following that. It's you make NFL rosters by being good on special teams, and that's exactly what he did. And reading this article, they just said his ability to play on special teams, make those occasional flash plays on offense, and the coaches were just like, "We have to have this guy." I mean,
Mhm.
that's that, and that's kind of Idaho's brand of football, right? With those like blue collar, you know, put your hand in the, not necessarily with him like you just talked about, but it's these blue collar, grinded out kind of guys.
Yeah, and I love the athleticism, right? He's played quarterback, he's played running back. He has a great feel for the game at multiple positions, and that's how you find your way on the roster. I remember going into college football, I was, probably not the biggest or fastest guy ever, but I could long snap. And you know
Yeah,
what? They always need a long snapper. So, however if you can play multiple positions, I mean, that's the recipe to get on the field, my friend.
yeah, right. Yeah, so a couple of these guys here. We'll jump up here to Jonah Ellis too. He played at Moscow, linebacker for the Broncos. Now played at University of Utah. He was one of the better defensive guys in the Pac-12 as he came up, kind of quietly under the radar. I feel like not a whole lot of people have talked about him, but he's a guy that Denver is going to be a very young team this year. They got rid of everyone pretty much. You
Basically hit
know,
reset, rookie
yeah,
quarterback. Yeah.
yeah, right. Rookie quarterback. They Justin Simmons isn't there, who was an All Pro safety. So some of these young guys for Denver are going to play, and they're going to play early. And I look at a guy like Jonah Ellis. That I don't think he'll necessarily start, but I could see him being in the rotation come middle to the later part of the season, especially at Denver, which Denver's coming up on 10 years now without making the playoffs. So, especially if that rings true again this year, you could definitely see him get some action, especially towards that later part of the season. Denver liked him a lot. He's kind of a Sean Payton kind of guy, and kind of he's this fast guy off the edge kind of thing, cover type linebacker. I think he's going to fit in that defense really well.
Yeah, you make some good points. So the defensive end position, that rush position in the what was formerly known as the Pac-12,
Yeah,
you had Latu from UCLA, and he got all the accolades, and he has all the physical traits. He's a big, strong kid, coming off the edge, and he did all kinds of stuff, very disruptive. And then all of a sudden, you had Ellis, who kind of did the same thing, right? And
yeah,
and everybody knew about him, and he has the pedigree. Luther Ellis, his dad, big time, played defensive end for University of Utah, but then also played for the Detroit Lions for years. So the pedigree, and I would say the physicality, he has it all there. And he's just a football kid. You watch him
yeah,
play. He's a football guy now. I think when you get in the NFL, we can call you a guy. So
yeah,
he's a football guy, and you watch the way he moves. He's very fluid and he's explosive. Highly,
right,
highly explosive. So you'll see him in situational downs. He until that edge, if they're running that 3-4 defense, until you can drop and play more of that coverage that they're going to ask you to, maybe cover a flat or something like that. And he'll get there. I mean, he's too good of an athlete not to be there, but I think you'll see him in rushing situations, situational type stuff. Obviously, you're going to see the field on special teams, but third round draft pick, they're high on him and they love his motor. I have zero ties to the Denver Broncos. I have no insight. All I do is I get my
yeah,
feed that pops up about people talking about him, and I know what I saw. Full disclosure, I am not a University of Utah fan. I'm a fan of the other team that hates the University of Utah. And so you watch everybody that you play against, and you hyper analyze these guys. And so knowing what he brings to the table, I think the Broncos have a good football player that's going to contribute probably early on and for a lot of
yeah.
years.
Yeah, I agree with that. Denver likes him a lot, and I grew up 60 mile an hour north of Denver, so I followed him pretty closely. Moving on here to Scott Matlock, the pride of Homedale. He made the Chargers 53 here for the second year in a row. Played at Boise State.
Hmm?
They must like him. They've kept him around for 2 years now.
Yeah, well, Scott Matlock's he is your eminent blue collar player, and he has a wonderful story. And I'm not going to go over that, but I think because I wouldn't do it justice. His brother Steve Matlock played at University of Idaho. He played at Capitol High School. Steve did, and then he played at University of Idaho as a starting center. Great guy, a couple of great guys. The Matlocks are, and they've overcome a lot in their lives, but they're just phenomenal men at this point. But Scott's a beast. He's the kind of guy you're like, boy, I don't want to run into that guy
Yeah.
in a dark alley at night. But he'd probably shake your hand and say, "Hey, can I help you get somewhere?" He's just a nice guy. So, but as far as the Chargers are concerned, they like him rotationally. He started getting in towards end of the season. You started seeing more and more downs. He eats up blocks really well, and that motor, like you would see, they have to double him. So the offensive line would double and then move to the next level to try and get the linebacker. And he has that motor running, and he would cause those guys to stay. So if you could eat up those blocks and those and cause havoc and disruption, he's doing absolutely the Chargers asked him to do. And I'll tell you what, man, he pride and joy of Boise State, because I don't know, you fly a lot too, but for work, because let's just be honest, this isn't the real work. He was all over the airport for years, for a year, man. I saw Scott Matlock's face in the Boise airport every time I walked there. I'm like, "What's up, Scott? How you doing?"
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, they had a big billboard of him on that little catwalk at the Boise airport going down to all the B gates, which they have that little downstairs area where all the Alaska flights are, and then everyone else is down this little hall. So, you're right. He was there for years,
a long time.
Yeah,
out of the blue,
Yeah, right. Yeah, but he's kind of the perfect guy. He's kind of this blue collar guy from small town Idaho and Oakdale. So
yeah.
All right. So Taysom Hill, the highest paid guy on this list, most well known guy on this list, still with the Saints, and the Saints just love this guy. Obviously, a Highland grad, and Highland's had some guys come through the NFL, but he's got to, I think at this point, got to be in the conversation for the best to come out of that high school.
Yeah, he arguably is the best to come out of the state of Idaho at this point. And again, we'd have to jog our memory, but in the modern era of the NFL, I would argue he's the best to come out of the state of Idaho. And and we talk about being versatile. He's the ultimate versatility. He can play multiple positions. They list him as quarterback and a tight end, but his tight end position again is the H back. He lines up in the slot. Yeah. You saw his running mate back at BYU, Jamal Williams, was in the backfield. And he was playing fullback during this game, and he came up and he just had a killer block, and he sprung Jamal Williams for like a 15, 20-yard gain. And so they're all goo gaga over that. Was Taysom Hill going to be a fullback this year? And the truth is, and they talked, did you see the article? Like, they thought he was going to be a linebacker. They tried to recruit him to be a linebacker. So moral of the story is, if you're big and you're strong and you're fast, you're a good football player, and you can chuck a ball around, you can go play in the NFL. I mean, you're probably all right.
I think the most fun talking point about Taysom Hill is the fantasy aspect of it for guys playing fantasy football. Because if your league, if he's just a tight end, you can play him in your tight end position and get quarterback points for him. I mean, he's one of it's a super high ceiling, and there might be games where he doesn't touch the ball at all, or there might be games where he gets 6 carries on the goal line and scores 3 touchdowns. And so,
well, and that's the most frustrating part. I mean, you talk a lot to these fantasy gurus, and they're like, Taysom Hill, love him, hate him, right? You never know what you're going to get, so you risk. It's almost like you have to roll the dice and say, listen, I'm going all in on this week. I'm playing Taysom Hill, and he may score me 20 points.
Yep.
He also may not even touch the freaking ball. You may not get any points out of that, and you're going to lose. You're going to get handed to you. So, he is the biggest frustration for those fantasy folks.
I think if someone is playing against, so if I'm playing someone and he plays Taysom Hill, I'm like, he knows something. He knows the Saints OC or something. Because I'd get nervous about it.
But he's like, hey, buddy, text me, how many carries are you going to get?
Yeah, what do you guys think of goal line package this week, right?
Truth.
Yeah. So that's the 4 Idaho connections that we found that made the 53-man rosters. So moving on now to college. I mean, obviously Van Der Esch, we know he's not in there anymore for the Cowboys, but and again, these are all guys that graduated from Idaho high schools. So I know
Yes.
there's tons of Boise State connections and U of I connections, and there's a guy from College of Idaho. We get it. We're focusing. I mean, we would talk for days and days and days if it was all Idaho connections. So we shrunk it down to graduated from high school here. So there you
Done.
go. So as we're most college teams are going to play their first game this weekend. So a lot of the in college football they do the two deep depth charts is kind of the big thing. NFL's got the 53, college football's got the two deep. So we're going to talk about a little bit of Idaho connections that popped up on some of these two deep depth charts. Again, there's three obvious ones that a lot of people watching this should already know about. Colson Loveland, tight end one for Michigan. Austin Bolt going to be a starting receiver for Boise State, according to their two deep, and Jonah Dalmas, obviously the starting kicker, has been the starting kicker for a while for Boise State. But we talked about it a little bit last week. Colson Loveland, a lot of people think he's going to be one of the best tight ends, not only in the Big Ten, not only in Michigan, but in the country.
In the country, yeah.
Yeah.
Big, strong kid, athletic. Call him Farm Strong. He's from
Yeah.
And just the way that he plays football is fantastic. So keep your eye on him. That'll actually be a storyline that you and I had talked about even prior when we were creating the show. Things that we wanted to watch, and then Colson Loveland was one of those guys.
Yep, for sure. Austin Bolt's an interesting one, and kind of when we made this list, I was kind of keeping it more towards power programs. I don't know. Boise State is going to try to make it to the CFP, which they're not in one of the Power Four conferences now. But I put Austin Bolt on here just because I think it's just such a good story of his rise at Boise State. Local kid hasn't gone anywhere. Bora High kid was a very good athlete at Bora, both at football and basketball. And now this is his season to shine now on the field that he grew up watching all these games at Boise State, and now he's going to be a starting wide receiver. And what is a very deep wide receiver room at Boise State.
And he kind of jumped on the scene. Well, first of all, if you're from Boise, you know Austin Bolt. That's a name.
Yeah.
You remember. I mean, he took Bora to the state championship in basketball and won it, and was the 5A player of the year, and then signed to play football. And everybody thought, okay, he's about 6'4" athletic kid. And they're like, maybe they bulk him
coming
up.
Out. No one really kind of knew. I don't think anyone really knew what the plan was when he came out, right?
Yeah, I mean, he goes there, and what does he play? Do they bulk him up and have him play tight end? Is he fast enough? Is he athletic enough to play receiver? And he himself said, he's like, I can't really keep a ton of weight on. Like, I don't get big,
Yeah.
You can get strong and you can put some muscle on, but he didn't get tight end size, I think. And then at the end of last season, when that tumultuous wide receiver room and, hey, I'm transferring, I'm jumping in the portal, I'm not in the portal. You guys know the story. I decided to play Bolt, and he really was able to shine in his opportunities. And I think that carried over to this season. And so you're right. Wonderful story. Plus, when he broke his leg, I mean, that was gross.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he came out and he broke his leg in the first game of would have been his sophomore year, I want to say.
Yeah, it was a couple years ago.
Yeah, of his sophomore year, broke it, and then he took the whole, and he tried to play through pain. So anyway, moral of the story is phenomenal recovery, and he's back in the game, and he's going to really wear that. So he kind of is like the pride and joy, if you would say, of, if you're a Boise local or you're the Treasure Valley or even Idaho, and he's playing for an Idaho school, and he's going to be shining and have that spotlight on him. Austin Bolt, great story.
Yeah, so I think that's going to be a really fun one to watch this year. Jonah Dalmas, kicker for Boise State. Listen to some local media around here. They're talking, could he potentially be an NFL kicker one day?
Lou Groza watch, right, for the best kicker in the country. He's 97. Dang it, I don't have the stats in front of me. About a 90, 95
it's
or 97.
Over 90% accuracy.
Accurate, yeah. Didn't miss an extra point all year.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is the uprights in college, right, are a little bit wider than the NFL. So, I mean, that's something that NFL teams obviously look for is the accuracy. The thing that I've heard about what NFL teams could be looking for is to improve the power a little bit, and then obviously kickers in the NFL, there's only 32 of them, so it's tough to get jobs there. But I think maybe if he has a strong showing here in this senior year, maybe he'll get a look. Who knows?
Yeah.
But
And there's
without,
always the UFL. That's good football, right? And
yeah,
there's
yeah,
football all around the country. But I'm telling you, UFL, a couple guys made the jump. So I think that's something we can talk about at a later show. But just the
yep,
pathway now, I think it gets
yeah.
better
And hey, their paychecks clear the bank too. So for now at least,
for now.
but so
Got the Rock back in it though. Come on, the Rock.
yeah, right. All right. Moving on to some other Idaho kids that played here. Got 3-4 years ago. We got some starters to talk about. Washington, Utah. Kenyon Sadiq is tight end on Oregon, listed as a tight end 3 on some of the stuff we saw that was kind of the unofficial people making projections on their 2 deep. Had him right at that tight end 2, tight end 3 spot. But a couple that jumped out to us here, Gerard Memoir. He's going to be the starting guard for University of Washington this year, starting at left guard. He's a Middleton kid. It's a kid that both you and I remember throughout those years. Big, stocky kid, and he had committed to go play at the time Power 5 football, and now he's going to get his chance to start.
Yeah. And I remember being a bulldozer. I mean,
Yep.
he just, okay, get behind him, let's see how far. And it was, the whole saying of 3 yards in a cloud of dust. And this was more like 7 yards in a cloud of dust and like
Yeah.
a swath of bodies left to the side if he got up there. So it's good to see him. And honestly, the question you have with a lot of these high school kids coming out of Idaho is the talent looks like it's there because we don't have the same competition at the top to bottom that it's just a population thing and
Mm-hmm.
some other factors, but mostly population thing. But how do they progress when they get to the college level? How do they physically grow? Are they strong? Do they continue working hard? Do they fit? Do they understand the schemes? But it's how they progress, because a lot of times Idaho kids aren't finished products. I mean, Colston Loveland was probably the most finished product we'd had in a while.
Yeah.
And then, Taysom Hill's a different story, but if we're talking kind of recently, and that's where Gerard's coming in, and you can see that he has progressed physically. He got on that college weight program and just strong as an ox and really fits well at that Washington. Side note too, I'm going to throw a shout out to Luke Lucchini. He, he came as a preferred walk-on last year for University of Washington. So a couple of Idaho kids represent University of Washington. Big time football. I mean, they're both on that, played for national championship last year.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the list, obviously we're following Boise State, Michigan, Washington, and Utah are teams that we're going to be keeping a close eye on this year, and that kind of leads into this next one. Another starting guard, this one out of Rigby, Tanoa Togiai, another
Togiai.
another Togiai. Here you go, starting guard for Utah. Utah's going to be really good this year. I think they could win the Big 12. That's not really a hot take, but
I hope they don't. I hope they don't. We could have a whole freaking story about this one, but they are going to be good and they're talented and they have their 18-year. What is he? I think he's a 9th-year senior, Cam Rising, a quarterback. But protecting him is going to be Togiai. Okay. And Togiai comes from a bloodline of lots of Togiais, and they play football, and they play football really, really well. In fact, there's a Togiai, former BYU guy, now on Idaho State, and we can talk about him in terms of his playing time and what it looks like. But and then there's a brother, I want to say, that was in the NFL for a while, the Ohio State
Togiai. Tommy Togiai. He played for the Browns for a little bit. Ohio State guy. Yeah. So it's
he just got cut. I did see that, but I think he got picked up on a practice squad. I think he did get picked up, so we could we can talk about that. So, but yeah, Togiai should be good.
Yep. Moving down the list, Teo Johnson, a free safety out of Thunder Ridge. He's going to be looking like a backup free safety for Utah now. But, one of those guys, they're getting down to guys now that are an injury away from seeing significant playing time. And once you're on this 2 deep, you play. That is what it is. So we're going to see a couple Idaho kids get some playing time for Utah this year. So that'll be fun to watch. And like I said, Utah is going to be supposed to be pretty good this year. All right, one more here. Long snapper. This is your school, BYU. Dalton Riggs at Eagle.
Yeah.
There you go.
Like I said, if you can do some funny things like some multiple positions, Dalton Riggs, when he played at Eagle, I'm pointing that way because that's where Eagle is for me. Looks different, but when he played at Eagle, he played other positions, right? But he was really good as a long snapper. And kind of a funny story, he went to this long snapping camp. Again, they have these kicking camps, they have these special teams camps. And he went to this long snapping camp, and he was, one of the top 5 long snappers in the country, which, I mean, I didn't know there was such a thing until you're reading the story on him. But he just week in and week out. If you're a long snapper and nobody ever calls your name, you're doing your job. And quite frankly, that's what you look for. And so, you never hear, oh man, what an amazing snap. It's like, that's a given. And that's what they do as a long snapper. But he sees the field and he's going to contribute. Now, again, this pains me to say it. Given BYU's current situation, quarterback situation, offensive situation, he may see the field more than I like.
Well, here just a few minutes away here from Scott Cross is the play-by-play guy for the Idaho State Bengals. He'll be joining us here in just a couple minutes. But while he gets ready to pop on, we'll go ahead and jump into their season preview. So year 2 of Cody Hawkins. Last year they went 3-8. All 3 wins came in the Big Sky. Talked about it earlier. They got a lot of returning guys. They got some FBS guys coming up too. So this should be, from what ISU has been in the last couple of years, this should be a good year for them.
It's kind of a sneaky year for him too. And I am excited. I'd mentioned probably on one of the shows, my dad is an Idaho State alum as well as you are. So you may have some homerisms coming on this.
Yeah.
But I think it's a fun year in the sense that I think you're seeing the progress finally there. And they've recruited pretty well out of the state of Idaho. They do a pretty good job out of that northern Utah area. And then they get the onesie-twosie transfers. You get some kids out of California that maybe get overlooked. But I think it's starting to come together. And I say that not hesitantly, but they are picked 8th, which historically, I think the last 2 years, it was like 11 and 12. They have a chance to beat some teams. If you look at the scores of the games last year, they absolutely kept it close in some of them. A lot of them, they were in the game for a while. So, yeah, I think it's should be a sneaky fun year for Idaho State.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with that too. And, the interesting thing about ISU, watching the press conference this week, is who the heck is going to be the quarterback? How many of them are going to play? It's just so crazy. So, with that, we will welcome in this week's guest here, Scott Cross, the play-by-play guy for the Idaho State Bengals. Scott, you were welcome into the show, Fighting Tater Show, second guest we've ever had on the show. So congratulations on that, and congratulations on the new role as well. Second year here with play-by-play guy.
Thanks. Yeah, Lucas, it's good. I'm enjoying it, and thanks for having me on tonight. And we had a little issue, so I had to jump on my iPhone here. We're in the motel at Bend, Oregon. We left Pocatello at about 7 a.m. this morning, and made a stop in Boise for practice at Bishop Kelly, then a stop in Burns to just kind of stretch and get a little sandwich, and then on into Bend, and then we're off to Eugene tomorrow. We'll base out of Eugene tomorrow and game day. So it'll be it's a little bit of a road trip. This is a driving trip. It's the only one of the year for Idaho State, but it's okay. And I get the feeling that this team's ready to go. Just like every other team, they've been in camp for 4 or 5 weeks. They're tired of seeing each other. They're ready to go beat on somebody else.
Yeah, gotta love that. So we were talking a little bit earlier that we really have everyone at Oregon State's like gone. They all left for the transfer portal. And the interesting story coming into this game, old Idaho quarterback, now the Oregon State quarterback. Is that kind of a talking point at all for them this week?
Not really, because Giovanni McCoy never played against Idaho State. I mean, the 2 years that he was at 2 years he was at Idaho, he never played against the Bengals. So, I mean, the coaches are aware of who this guy is. Cody spoke a little bit about that in his press conference after practice yesterday. And look, they know Giovanni McCoy is a good quarterback. He will run occasionally, but I think they expect Oregon State really to run the ball more than throw. Now Giovanni can run a little bit as well, but with the crew that they've got and a couple of running backs that the Bengals have been talking about, and I got to be honest, I haven't had a chance to really get in depth yet. That's tomorrow as far as, because look, we've been trying to learn all the new guys at Idaho State. So
no kidding.
Anyway. But it's really it's not really much of a talking point. I mean, like I said, he's never played against the Bengals, so we don't. Sure. The coaching staff doesn't know what to expect, really.
Yeah, Scott, you talked about some of the new faces at Idaho State, and there is a bit of a turnover, and you're starting to see it. And it's not just at the FCS level, but it started the FCS level, which is if you're good, hey, take a pay bump and you got to go somewhere else. But now you're starting to see it all over the place. How is Idaho State adapting now, and how's that going with the coaching staff from your point of view with all the new faces?
Well, it wasn't – Idaho State really didn't lose a lot. And to be honest, my experience in my first year as far as the transfer portal goes, it really hits basketball and has more of an impact on basketball, at least from what I've seen with the Bengals this past year, than it does in football. Now, they lost Chaden James, which is actually – that's huge. I mean, that's a 1,000-yard receiver that the Bengals had last year, who is now at Fresno State. And look, there's no hard feelings there. Chaden went into the portal. It looked like he was going to stay. Fresno State came in late. But the coaching staff, if one thing about this offense, they have plenty of weapons. And is it, do you hate to see Chaden gone and try to find somebody to replace him? Absolutely. Do the coaches feel like they found somebody or bodies to replace him? Absolutely. So it'll be fun to find out on Saturday. Look, the key to this Idaho State football team and their success this year depends on it really hinges on two things. How well the defense can play, especially on 3rd and 4th down, because they really struggled in that area last year. And then the other thing is the improved offensive line for Idaho State. Can they run the football? The coaching staff believes they can, and they have depth at that offensive line position now that they did not have last year, and some experience. And then you combine that with the bevy of quarterbacks and the plethora of receivers, this offense can be pretty potent.
Yeah, and I guess that kind of leads into the question surrounding the offense. Who's going to be the quarterback? What's going on with quarterback?
Who's going to be the quarterback? A, B, C, or D?
Yeah, no kidding.
Look, here's we knew this going in. All right, that quarterback room is full. Your 4 top guys are the guys you would think. Jordan Cook, who was the starter last year, Cody named him the starter for the game Saturday. But he also said Hunter Hayes will get his looks, Jackson Sharman, the redshirt freshman, will get his looks, and Kobe Tracy will probably get some looks. So I think you're probably gonna see at least 3 or 4 quarterbacks. And depending on where this thing goes, I don't know, maybe Davis Harsin. I don't know. But the top 4, the top 4 are for sure Jordan Cook, Hunter Hayes, Kobe Tracy, and Jackson Sharman. I don't know 3, 4. I don't know if it's Kobe Tracy over Jackson Sharman. If it is, it would be merely based, I believe, on the experience. As Kobe out of Highland High School played 4 years at Utah Tech. And set great passing numbers for them down there, and Cody Hawkins is very pleased with what he's seen from Kobe Tracy. So, but Jordan Cook will start, and he'll start Saturday at Oregon State against the Beavers. And there's no set plan according to Cody. It's not like, hey, you're going to get 2 series, and then this guy's going to get 2 series. They're going to see how it goes. So, like if the first guy comes in and throws a pick on the first or second series, that doesn't mean he's coming out necessarily, because you don't get a chance to really look to see if he can sustain a series and how to play it out. So I get the feeling that Cody Hawkins and Buddy Blevins, the offensive co-offensive coordinator, they're going to give as many of those 3 or 4 guys a chance over the course of 4 quarters. Because look, do the Bengals want to win this game? Absolutely yes. They want to win. And I've been telling everybody all summer, this game's going to be better than people think.
I think
telling
so too.
you guys right now.
I think so too.
I think this could easily be a very competitive game into the fourth quarter. Now, we thought that going up to Idaho last year, but it was a different beast up in Idaho last year. The Vandals had a ton to play for. They were coming off a tough game. Oregon State is in a state of flux. They've got a new head coach, new offensive coordinator, if I remember correctly. They lost both their quarterbacks. They've lost a bunch of players to the transfer portal. They've got a lot of new faces. I think could be fair to say they might have more new faces than Idaho State does in a lot of positions. So I think it's going to be a great ball game.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. It's Oregon State's a school that I have no idea what Oregon State's going to be. I just know they're not going to be nearly as good as they were last year. But it's got 11 FBS transfers for Idaho State this year.
Yep.
Any of them stand out one over the other that hey, this is a dude that they got.
Oh, there's a couple, and especially on the receiver side, because most of those guys, and I'd have to look at the numbers, but most of them, we'll put a couple on the offensive line and stuff, but Stryker Rashid on the offensive line, and Ty Hyde. Of course, Ty Hyde played his high school ball down in Preston. He was with Kobe Tracy and the new offensive line coach, John Hughes, down at Utah Tech. So Stryker Rashid and Ty Hyde's names pop out there. But if you want to talk about offensive power, Eric Johnson, he's out of Katy, Texas. He's a transfer from Lehigh University, a grad student. He's going to be a good one. They got Hunter Roddy, a running back from Army, in the backfield. Zion Nunnally, a transfer from Washington State. He played high school football with Jordan Cook. So they got some good guys coming, FBS transfer guys. And, some of the younger guys have made an impression as well. But and on the defensive side, it's a lot of the names we know. David Rao, Cortland Horton, Logan George up there on that defensive front. Calvin Pitcher back at the safety. Tyler Bohannon, Josh Alford at the corners. Tyler Bohannon, as a senior, has really stepped up and really taken a leadership role with this team, and he's impressed the coaches and people watching. So that defense, I think, will be better. And I think Oregon State, look, they've come out and said, we're going to run the football. Mm-hmm. And as far as I'm concerned, and most of the folks around the Bengal program, it's like, go ahead, run the ball, because you're going to run into that 3-3-5. That linebacking core is good as well, and they can bring a guy up. So, I'm telling you guys, this is going to be a football game. I think it's going to be very fun.
Well, I have no doubt about that. That's what we talked about before you jumped on. And with all the FCS transfers to Oregon State and the FBS transfers to Idaho State, I think you're going to kind of see somewhat of a wash there. Now, talk to me about that linebacking core. I know Nate Reynolds really well. He stepped up big towards the end of the season last year. Is he going to see playing time again?
Oh yeah, he will. Matter of fact, I got to put the glasses on so I can read here. But when you look at the linebacking core, you're looking at guys that you're going to know. Okay, Nate Reynolds is listed as a starter on the 2 deep right now. You've also got Jagger Giles. This is a guy that's he's a senior. He's been around, so he's going to be there. Chris Sanchez, goodness gracious, this guy can hit, and he enjoys it. So I think that group right there is good. Taylor Tuioti, Adrian Rodriguez. I'm just looking at the 2 deeps, and there's some younger guys I think we'll probably find some ways to get in there and play. But Nate Reynolds was a guy that really had a great freshman season, and he's continued that through the summer and through the fall camp. And that's the biggest thing for Idaho State. They were able to keep basically the entire team here all summer and take advantage of the new summer practice rules, if you will, the how much contact the coaches can have with the players during the summer. And they're bigger, stronger, better conditioned, more experienced in a lot of those positions, especially on the defensive side, learning and refining that 3-3-5 defense that Josh Renda brought in last year. Now, is this team going to win the Big Sky Conference this year? I'm not going to go there. But I think this is a team that has a very favorable schedule. They have some of their tougher games at home, plus a couple winnable games, and they have winnable games on the road, which for me points to maybe a 6-6 season. We'll see.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll see.
Yeah.
I think North Dakota. I think week 3 at North Dakota will tell us a lot about this Idaho State team. Win or lose, if they're in that game, or if they can come away with a win, which a lot of people think they might, then I think 5-7, 6-6 is a mark. And I know a lot of people watching this would go, "What's 500?" Well, let me tell you, for a second-year coach in a program that won one game 2 years ago, 6-6 is remarkable. And it's a testament to this. Yeah. And that's a testament to this coaching staff and to these players and the commitment they've made over the last, 2 years.
Yeah. Well, what kind of jumps, or differences, I guess, have you noticed in year 1 to year 2 under Cody Hawkins?
Well, I don't know if there's a whole lot of differences, because that mentality of, caring and working together and working hard and so forth, that's always going to be there with Cody Hawkins and his staff. I think the defense probably, I think you're seeing more familiarity, and those guys, so much experience. Remember, there's 33 or 32 seniors on this team this year, because Cody had to bring in so many JC kids last year to fill the pantry, if you will, right? So I asked Cody on our podcast last night, does he feel pressure to win or to be successful with that group? And he said, not really, but it's important that the younger guys see what these older guys are doing as they go out. The younger guys coming in from behind know what it takes, to be successful and work towards more wins.
Yeah, and we have in our intro, we have a little clip of me saying, the thing I love about the Cody, I'm paraphrasing, the thing I love about the Cody Hawkins hire, he's an Idaho guy, Bishop Keller grad. He gets Idaho.
He does.
How is he with, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, he does get it. I mean, we got, a bunch of five kids in that linebacker room, or 5 or 6 linebackers that came in last year were all Idaho kids. Ian Duarte, he's listed. I believe he's listed on the 2D chart out there in that slot receiver position, which is who we talked about. Yeah,
fast.
Exactly. Now, he's a redshirt freshman, but Ian Duarte is a great athlete, and he's one of those guys that, all you got to do is give him the ball at the right time and the right moment in a game, and if he makes that one move and gets free, that's chunk yardage. And that's what they got with Chaden James last year. Every catch, 6-8 yards after the catch. And that's how you get to be a 1,000-yard receiver. Now, I'm not saying Ian Duarte is going to be that guy, but you got Jeff Weimer from UNLV, another transfer. It looks like there's a chance that they'll move him and use him in that slot position. And then you've got just the other receivers. Look, you've got Michael Shulikov, who some people think maybe has an NFL tight end sort of build. He's 6'6", and he's got great hands. And then, of course, you got Christian Fredrickson. I mean, Freddie's this is his last year as a senior out there on that Bengal offense on the receiving side. So, once again, Idaho kids, Shulikov out of Centennial and Fredrickson, of course, out of Rigby. You've got Talantogiai, who sees some time up there on that offensive line. He played at Rigby. So, yeah, you're right. Cody Hawkins gets Idaho.
Yeah.
Coach Scott, what's the I was going to say what's coaches, but hey, we'll call you coach as well.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah. Scott,
I don't know near as much as they do, but I'll fake it if I have to.
Hey, join the crowd. I mean, that's all we do on this thing, man. So what's the general sentiment around the program? Because my feeling is Pauline Theros has done a phenomenal job as athletic director. She's brought in the right people. She's built it. You can just see, like, if you follow her on Instagram or even LinkedIn or whatever, you can see she's doing stuff. She's growing the program, and then Coach Hawkins is doing that. The whole athletic department. What is the feeling around the athletic department, the football team specifically, compared to, say, maybe years past, and what are some of those differences?
Well, look, here's the biggest difference. The investments being made in the athletes, the investments being made to the student athletes at Idaho State and to the facilities that those students use to give them the best experience possible. You've got the new nutrition station that's in place now, tied in with Black Label Supplements, who is the supplement company for all Idaho State athletes. The new Jared Allen Strength and Conditioning facility there next to Holt Arena. That old sports and orthopedic building, that's going to be built out to create office spaces, well, Pauline told us last night on the podcast, they would like to do something similar and maybe not to the scale. But if you saw what Northern Arizona and some of the other schools around the Big Sky Conference have done to build student athlete centers where they can study, they can refuel, they can get nutrition, they can practice, they can, all those things to make it a great experience. And those are the types of things that Pauline Theros is working on. And she's done that with involvement from businesses in the community, but the community members, I believe, are also seeing what's going on around that athletic department, and that success is on the way and improvements are being made. The Prepare to Roar campaign, I believe, we didn't get the final numbers from Pauline last night, but close to $1 million raised this year on the Prepare to Roar campaign from donations over a 2-week period. And that what's nice. Well, what's really cool about that is people can go in and pick which program and which sport they want to make the donation to. And lots of other donors and businesses jumped onto that and said, hey, if we get this much, we'll match this much, and so forth. So look, Pauline gets Idaho State. She gets Pocatello. And she is doing some fantastic things. She's made great hires with coaches. Obviously, Cody Hawkins was a huge pickup for her. Ryan Looney, I think, on the basketball side, is one of the best guys around. He's got some good young kids coming in. We've seen the softball program have success. Soccer took a tough loss at home last night, gave up a goal in the last 5 minutes to lose 1-0 to Oregon State. But there again, there's an Idaho State and an Oregon State, and they're right there with them. And the other thing that Cody talked about with his success is that with the new scholarship rules and the realignment, he believes that as the FCS schools get up to those 85 scholarships like the FBS schools, he says, look, that gap is closing between FCS and FBS. Now, are the top Power 5 guys always going to be there and be better and have better facilities and stuff than the smaller schools? Maybe. But those mid-range and bottom end FBS and the mid-range and upper end FCS, he believes there's not going to be that much difference between them as we go down the road.
Yeah, that makes sense. I believe that. I think that the game is changing. I read an article that said possibly you're looking at college football breaking off and becoming its own entity of itself, meaning not even associated with the NCAA or anything like that. It becomes its own entity. And then I think all the rules are out the door, and then it becomes down to an arms race, money-wise, who builds the best program and how you do it.
Well, and what I saw, and I think the article maybe you're talking about was Coach Whittingham down at Utah said he could see something in the next 20 months to 4 years to where you would have almost an NFL minor league collegiate system, and they would have a bigger playoff. And they would be the top schools. But I still think you're always going to have, the FCS and the NCAA have their championship playoffs. And quite honestly, look, I think the FCS playoffs are every bit as compelling, if not more so, than the college football playoffs, because I think it's good football. And the Big Sky Conference is a perfect example of that. 6 of the top 25 teams in the preseason poll in FCS are from the Big Sky Conference. That's half the conference rated in the top 25 of the country. So that'll tell you what the Bengals are up against and what Oregon State might be up against come Saturday afternoon.
Totally agree. Yeah. The other argument that you hear too is just to kind of piggyback real quick, and we'll get off the subject. SEC and the Big Ten break off for their own thing. They have 2 16-team leagues, and that's that. But what does that do? That leaves a lot of opportunities for Idaho State and other schools, like you said, to close that gap and maybe grow their programs to fit that vacancy that's going to be left.
I agree. Yeah. If that happens, I agree. And, we're still trying to figure out this whole Mountain West Pac-2, formerly Pac-12, and where everybody's going to go from there. But right now, Big Sky football, FCS football is in a pretty good place. And I'm excited to get season number 2 going here on Saturday with what I think will be a great football game. And hey, look, I'm sitting here right now. I'm watching over my shoulder Sacramento State and San Jose State. And the last I looked, I believe Sacramento State was up 17-14 on the road approaching halftime. So Big Sky football is all well and good. And we'll be talking, I believe we're going to chat with Commissioner Tom Wistrcill at halftime of our game on Saturday
very cool.
in Reeser Stadium in Corvallis. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that's great that he's going up for that game too.
Right.
Go ahead.
And he's got Oregon and Idaho on Friday evening.
Oh, true.
So I think he's going to pull a doubleheader.
Yeah, a little double dip. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and then obviously Boise State going out there next week too. So all 3 Idaho schools going to Oregon in a 2-week span here.
Yeah, it's nice to play close to home, and there's good fan bases. We expect. Look, from what we've been told, Oregon State has sort of a quarter system for their classes, so a lot of the students aren't there right now. So it could be a situation where Reeser Stadium maybe isn't as much of a home field advantage for the Beavers as it might otherwise be, and maybe the Bengals can take advantage of it.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what the crowd is too outside of the student section after not getting into a power conference too. So
exactly.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to watch. Hey, one last thing before we let you go. It's something we gotta ask anyone affiliated with Idaho State football about.
Okay.
Dad's in town now, right?
Yep.
Hawkins and Hawkins.
Yep.
What's that relationship been like? What have you seen from that?
Dan is here as his role is director of player and staff development.
Yeah.
So, Dan is kind of overseeing some of the special teams things. They lost their special team coach, Jesse Thompson, late in the season. So Nick Alamalo and Scott Thiessen have jumped in to take over kind of the punting and kicking coaching. But Dan is kind of overseeing the rest of the special team stuff a little bit. But, he's just bringing his knowledge, his expertise, his years of experience in here to help coaches become better coaches and to help players become better players. And, he's not at the forefront. When you come to practice, Dan is out amongst the players and the coaches, and he's walking around and he's talking one-on-one. But, look, there's no doubt who the boss is. It's Cody. And I think Dan's really enjoying this role to come in. And I hadn't had a chance to talk with him a whole lot until last night at our first podcast show that we did. And then this morning as we were getting ready to leave the ICCU Dome there in Pocatello. But I think Dan really enjoys what he's doing. And I know Cody and the rest of the coaching staff and even the players, it seems like they enjoy being able to interact with him and glean from him some of that knowledge he's attained over the years.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear. And I growing up in Colorado, when Dan Hawkins took the Colorado job, Cody Hawkins was quarterback for Colorado.
Right.
I was in Colorado when all that happened too. So it's kind of fun to watch that. I watched that growing up, and now they're at what now is my alma mater. So I just think that's been fun for me to watch.
Well, and I was excited to see that. I a lot of people said when Dan announced that he was going to step down at UC Davis that he was coming this way, but I think it was more organic than that. I think he's got Cody and his wife have a new grandbaby, so they've got 3 now. He's got other family over in Boise, and I think they just thought, look, this is a way we can get close to the family, keep everybody together, and still stay in the game of football a little bit. And I'm glad he's here. I think I don't know how much you'll see like a direct impact on things that he does or says right away. It might be real subtle, but nonetheless, you'll never turn down the opportunity to have a guy with that much experience around your program.
Yeah, no kidding. And family and football, you gotta love that, right?
And that's what the Hawkins are all about.
Yeah. So, Scott, thanks so much for jumping on with us here tonight. Safe travels the rest of the way to Corvallis and back. Go Bengals.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Roar, Bengals, roar. It's going to be a great one on Saturday.
Yeah.
Thanks, Scott. We appreciate
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, appreciate it. All right, so that's going to do it for us here today. He's Ryan Luke. My name is Lucas Gebhardt. We are the Fighting Taters. And enjoy your weekend. Lots of football going all over the state. Boise State, Idaho State, U of I, College of Idaho, all of them in action this weekend. Go all Idaho teams. We'll see you next week.